The light shines on you as we take up the hunt for the dark friends throughout the galaxy and beyond in the 41st millennium. The world of Warhammer is in need of a true purge, and the Children of Light will inspire a custom Space Marine chapter that will lead the way. So, as we prepare for Season 3 of Wheel of Time, how about you guys join me as we create a custom Space Marines chapter based on the Children of Light and bring them to the endless war that is the 41st millennium. Like we've done with a few other books throughout the series, today we're going to tackle a very interesting group of people from one of my favorite book series, The Wheel of Time. This group, the Children of the Light, is actually one of the antagonists, but in the 41st millennium, I very much see them as being part of the Imperium. Their way of doing things and their desire to purge the world of all evil is something that's very, very similar to a lot of what we see throughout the Imperium, and it feels like it just would be a great fit. So throughout this Fiction to 40K series that we've got going, I decided this is the next one I want to tackle. In order to bring the Children of Light into the 41st millennium and tie them into the Space Marines for a custom chapter, and yes, I did actually consider making them a guard unit instead, but given their parent chapter, the Black Templars, it felt right to make them a Space Marine unit. It's something that isn't 100% lore accurate, because the Children of Light are far more accommodating to both genders and a bunch of other things, as long as you're following their practices. I feel like in the 41st millennium, the basics of the Children of Light would be ramped to 1,000. And because of that, the Emperor's Light chapter is actually a splinter faction of the Black Templars. They did not feel that the Black Templars were doing enough, and more needed to be done. Just like the Children of Light broke away from everything that was going on in their world, trying to establish a purity and a strength that didn't exist at the time, the Emperor's Light chapter did the same. Despite the extremes of the Black Templars, it wasn't enough for the Emperor's Light chapter. They decided that they needed to break away and they needed to move on and put Black Templars Crusade behind them so that they could properly purge. Now, this leads to a lot of contention with the Black Templars, but they still work with them. It's kind of similar to how some of the Blood Angel successors, like the Dread Knights and the Flesh Terrors, will still work with the Blood Angels, despite having some major differences in ideology and tactics. So this is what we'll see with the Emperor's Light as well. Like the Black Templars, they are a crusading chapter. They are fleet-based. Although they've kind of settled in the Segmentum Obscurus, where they're on a purge for anything even kind of chaos-related. They've gone so far that even the Inquisition is a little hesitant to call them up, because they don't stop, and their definition of chaos-tainted is extreme. While they do have a fleet base, they have taken up residence in a string of worlds, establishing kind of fortress monasteries, more like temporary enclaves or bastions where they can recruit and pull from while they patrol the area or strike out at other areas around it, giving them a very strong recruiting base to far exceed Codex mandates, which isn't unusual for the Black Templars, but for the Emperor's Light, they could care less. They actually see the Codex as heresy, because that's not the way the Emperor intended it. That's not how he established everything. And because of that, they currently don't recognize Gilliman's authority either, due to his heresy, and they're pretty much gone rogue, yet they're still executing everything that needs to be done, and they do still respond to the ecclesiarchy. And that's why they haven't been declared heretical yet, because they're so openly willing to respond to the ecclesiarchy, almost to the Sisters of Battle level, where they will step in anytime the ecclesiarchy and certain inquisitors reach out. So they are still loyal to the Imperium, but to the pure Imperium, not to the Council of Terra or local governors. If any of them get in the way, they will die because they're impeding the Emperor's will. And it makes them very, very violent if you're on the wrong side of them. And to mount it all, they've taken the star symbol as their emblem, and they run a mostly white with gold accents armor. So they are very distinct, they are very shiny, they're very easy to spot. And a lot of people in the Segmentum Obscurus tend to actively avoid them if possible, because any type of mistake or slip up that could be deemed even minorly heretical will lead to death if you are not careful around them. So this is what the chapter would look like if the Children of Light went into the 41st Millennium and took up the banners of Space Marines. And I can see a pretty similar trait to them and how they would run on the tabletop as well. And in the lore, they would be a lot of fun in the actual lore due to their extreme zeal. It would be something to a level that would cause a lot of problems, especially if you have the resurrected Gilliman or potentially the Lion who is accepting heretics back if they were to ever find that out. It could be very messy. So I would love to see them drift into reality. Probably not going to happen, just the copyright issues and stuff like that. But it was a lot of fun to create them. So next, let's talk about what they look like on the tabletop so that you can begin to purge all of the Emperor's foes. So now you've learned the lore background of this custom chapter, here's how I'd suggest fielding them on the tabletop so that you can really bring these guys to life. First off, I would have a captain. I would probably give him a relic shield as well, just to kind of give him that knightly feel. I would also include an Emperor's Champion to make sure we have that link to the Black Templars and the Sons of Dorn to really establish that sword fighting custom that is the champion's role. Then I have a Castellan, I have a Chaplain, and Terminator armor. And those are the four main characters that you'll see on the battlefield. On top of that, we have a lot of really fun stuff army-wise. I would do 2 boxes of Primaris Crusader squads, depending on how you want to run them. Either way works. I would have a company heroes. I would have 2 boxes of Primaris Sword Brethren, 2 Terminator squads, and then a lot of this is going to be vehicle-based. In the lore, the Children of Light do have a lot of horsemen and do a lot of caravans and trade, stuff like that. So it felt right to give them a lot of vehicles. So for that, I would give them 2 Templar Repulsors and 1 Repulsor Executioner to give them the ability to haul around pretty quickly, as well as have something that's going to be a little bit punchier to be effective in combat and things like that. On top of that, you're going to need some Black Templar accessories to really make this work properly. Now, you don't need those accessories, but having the Black Templar shoulder pads and then painting the cross gold would achieve the purpose of the 4-pointed star that is their symbol. So that one is your call, but however you want to do it, it shouldn't be too hard to put together and get it assembled. So now that we've gone over the pretty simple list, let's jump over and talk about the actual cost of fielding this army so that you get a better picture of what it'd be like to start from scratch. The cost is based on a box-by-box basis because combat patrols and things like that may not be available regularly, or if you're watching this video, say 6 months from now, who knows what the Black Templars are going to have, especially after the hints we got in the LVO releases. So I want to make sure that you can get a rough perspective on what it would cost to build from scratch, but I do absolutely recommend getting those combo boxes if you can find them. They will save you money, especially with the way this is built. A lot of the characters and things like that are in those combo boxes currently. So I absolutely do recommend them, but they do not reflect in the actual cost. Maybe someday we'll see about the cheapest way we can build an army. But for now, let's talk the full retail cost. This is based on Warhammer.com, which is usually the place where it's going to be most expensive to buy stuff. Typically, I only recommend buying there if it's an online only thing where you can only buy a certain character, a certain model from them directly, and you can't get it through anywhere else. So that cost would be $1,044, which isn't terrible for the army list we've talked about so far, but not great either. So I would absolutely recommend looking at your local game shops or Wargame Portal or Amazon or any of those other places where you can find Warhammer for considerably cheaper. If you want to go to the secondhand market too, I would absolutely recommend that as well. So let's talk about what it would look like if you went that route. Now, secondhand I don't do just because that's unable to be repeated. Same with local game stores. Sometimes local game stores will give bonuses that are unique to a specific location. So I can't promise those. So we went off of Wargame Portal and Amazon.com to get our prices. Now, with all of that said, it's going to run you about $908.12 to source it through Wargame Portal and Amazon.com. Like I said, not insignificant. That can go a long ways to getting you what you need. Honestly, the biggest lack of change there would be the Black Templars kits. So if you did drop those, that is going to save you about $150 as well. But like I said, it's going to depend on how you want to do it and what call you want to make. I absolutely recommend going that way. Now, normally we do a fluffy total as well. In this case, there are no other sources for these models to do a fluffy total on. It's not like we can go to the Heresy or anything like that. I mean, we could, but there's not going to be anything specific that's going to actually help our real lore builds at all. Unless you wanted to get the actual Sigismund model and use him to proxy for the captain. So that's going to run about $1,045 with the retail costs off. And then adding Sigismund back in, it's going to not really make that big of a difference, so I wouldn't recommend spending the money. But that's how much it's going to cost to build this army and put it on a tabletop. Next, let's talk about some painting styles, and then we'll wrap up with some tactics. So now that you've got your army purchased and you're wanting to build and paint the Emperor's Light chapter, here's what you're going to be looking at. Right here is going to pop up a picture of just my mock-up of how I'd paint it. As you can see, white is the primary color, gold is going to be your primary accent, and then I recommend using a little black just to break it up. You can use silver or like a plate metal from Army Painter. They are definitely one of my big recommendations for metallics and things like that. And I actually really like this one. It's a really cool twist. I am a White Scars player, partially. They were my first Legion and kind of my first love. And a lot of this color scheme is pretty similar, just slightly inverted. Instead of gold being primary, I did put some red accents on it for the actual emblems. But in reality, the chapter emblem is going to be gold as well. The only thing that may be red is any insignia they put on the other shoulder. But it's pretty straightforward. This should be a pretty easy paint job. And like I said, you can tweak it a little bit to make it feel better, but this is what I'd recommend. Now, let's wrap this up with talking about some tactics and how we'd play them on the tabletop and get you guys on your way to get back to the tabletop and have some fun games. Okay, now that you've got it painted and built and ready to go, it's time to get it on the tabletop. And let's talk about how you're going to be using it. I would go with the Righteous Crusade detachment. It's a pretty simple choice, and I would play it very similar to how you play Black Templars, getting strategic units in strategic places to hit. That's why we got the repulsors and the repulsor redeemer to make sure it can punch properly and really give you some oomph on the tabletop while moving quickly. You'll want to screen your backline fairly heavily as well, because you don't want anybody jumping in behind you, because it will be a little hard to get back once you're fully engaged up front. But other than that, it should be actually a pretty simple, heavy push, maybe using some wall-ish tactics to move forward in a brick and force your enemy backwards. And I think you'd see a lot of success that way. Now, I'm not a Black Templars player, so I cannot guarantee those tactics are sound, but just reading through everything and playing a couple of rounds on Tabletop Simulator, that's kind of the way I feel it would work. So, like I said, entirely up to you guys how you play it, but that's the way I would see it. Now, I do appreciate you guys sticking through all of this video. I know it's been a little bit crazy talking about the Children of Light in 40K and what it would look like, but I think it was a lot of fun. So if you guys enjoyed this, make sure you like and subscribe. We have a lot of cool stuff coming out later as well. And let me know in the comments below if there's any books or TV shows or anything like that that have large armies that you'd like me to turn into a Space Marine chapter, or if not a Space Marine chapter, maybe something else. Whether it be a Xenos faction, Imperial Guard faction, whatever. I'm happy to do that. And if you have any other suggestions of videos you'd like to see me turn into armies or anything Warhammer related that you'd like me to cover, please let me know down there as well. Now, go with the Emperor's Light and enjoy this army on the tabletop if you can, and I will see you guys later.